All right. How do you make a survey in Qualtrics? That's a good question, and one I hope to answer. First thing you want to do is log in, and I think you can create a free account that has limited features, but faculty members at Tech, in the psych department at least, tend to have full features in their accounts and let people use it. So this is Michael Serra's account. He's got a bunch of surveys already made. I'm going to go find my folder. Mark. I think that's my name. Here we go. Yeah, so here's all the stuff I've made so far. And is this the right? Yeah. Okay. Some of this stuff I'm seeing looks like it's on the wrong account, but whatever. So I'm going to start a new survey. Go to create project. And since I navigated to my folder first, it's going to appear in my folder. I'm going to go to blank survey. And for this one, I'm going to call it media frequency encoding. I'm going to put pilot at the beginning because we're piloting the media frequency encoding. Great project. All right. Annoyingly, the first step to every Qualtrics survey is to go to this guide over here and tell it to shoo, get out of here. And then we can actually get to work. So this is a block right here. You create blocks of survey questions and you can rearrange these. So for instance, if you want to change what order the demographics appear in relationship to the instructions, or if you want to change around sections, you can do that. I always start with the intro block. And you can choose the question type over here. I'm going to put descriptive text because they're just going to read this stuff and click next. And like a cooking show, I have some stuff set up on the side. Came prepared. This is a different browser that's got a different yeah, I seem so prepared because I'm like stammering like all prepared people do. But this other browser has a different account I have access to pulled up so that I can pull out things that are prepared in advance. This is the kind of consent form you want to include in basically all of your studies. It's kind of boilerplate. And it says, what is this project studying? What is it for? Blah, blah, blah. And Qualtrics has decided that this is now a multiple choice question, even though I said I wanted it to be descriptive text. So after the intro block, I'm going to come here and do add block and do demographics next. Create new question, and I'm going to do fill in the blank text entry. There we go. Age. I'm putting, for example, 34 or 18 because some people will write out 30, and that's really annoying. Let's name this question. Whenever you get the data from your survey, you can tell, you might want to label the questions because the block names don't show up, just the question IDs. I didn't bother for the intro because they're not actually saying anything to the intro. Now I could click new question here, but I could also do this little red thing will eliminate this question, and either of these green buttons will add a question above or below. Let's do what is your sex? And Qualtrics will try and do you a solid every now and then and guess what you want, and this is a pretty good guess, but usually it's good to do prefer not to say and then do other, and each of these have options on them. If you click on them, you can click this arrow and do allow text entry. So this way, if you're male, female, prefer not to say, or if you're one of the new interesting designations like non-binary or fluid or something, we can be very inclusive and acknowledge that, let them enter it. Usually I put a lot more demographics than this and put like education and everything like that, but I think you get the gist, and I'll just go and add the rest of the stuff later. The real important thing is for the stimuli, we want them to rate the vividness, the concreteness, the emotionality of each of these headlines. Not each of these headlines. We're actually going to have each participant do a random subset of all these like 500 or so headlines. And so like we'll pick 20 at random, rate the vividness of those. Pick another 20 at random, rate the concreteness. Pick another, you get it. And Qualtrics can make sure that as people are randomly sampling from this database of 500 things, that it'll evenly distribute it so that you'll get ratings for pretty much everything. So let's start with the vividness. I'll do rate vividness will be the name of that block. And we're going to start with a definition of vividness. We don't want people to just take a guess. The following mind. And we can come and refine that later. It doesn't really matter what we call that. And then create next question. Instead of just clicking create next question and then picking over here, you can also go straight to clicking this little arrow right here. And I'm going to do a sliding scale. Actually, no, that gets kind of annoying. The formatting for the sliding scales, I like how they end up, but I kind of hate how you have to like really jerry-rig them to work right. So I'm going to do a rating scale. I want there to be, let's say, 5 levels. And I want them to be horizontal. And each of these will have the same instructions. Rate how vivid the following headline is. 2 spaces. And let's start with Florida man undergoes active euthanasia allowed by new federal law. And let's make this look more like a headline. So let me explain what I just did. When you click on a question to edit it, this is kind of the simplest editor. You can also click on Rich Content Editor if you want to get fancy, and I am a fancy man, or so I believe. I'm going to up this to 16-point font, and that's a very news-looking bold. Florida man undergoes active euthanasia case allowed by federal law. So that looks more like a headline, in my opinion. And then, not vivid at all, moderately vivid. What happened to, I had 5 options here, decided I only have 4. By the way, Qualtrics sometimes, I love this platform. It makes a lot of, it's a lot easier than just literally creating your own, like, PHP, JavaScript, from scratch survey yourself. It's way easier than that, but sometimes it does some annoying things. I will warn you. Barely vivid. There we go. So let's label this EUTH1. So it's the euthanasia category, and it's the first one, so we can keep track of this easy. So let me show you what this is going to look like. There's one of the niftier things in here is as you're making a survey, you can preview it. By default, it assumes you want the blocks in the order that you created them. If you want to rearrange that, you can go to survey flow. And for, let's say you wanted to wait and do the demographics at the end of the survey, you go to move, and like a playlist on iTunes, you can just change it. But let's keep that where it goes, save flow. Now going and previewing what it'll look like to participants, click the preview thing right here, and it shows you what it'll look like on a smartphone and on a web page. So these are the instructions. I'll hit next. What's your age? I am 31 and I am male. In the following section, we will show you fictitious headlines. I find this slightly vivid. All right, it's done. The great thing about previewing is you can catch mistakes. For one, you don't want the instructions, I just realized, to be one of the questions in this block. You want the instructions to be their own block. So I messed up there. That's why you want to preview everything. Let's make that descriptive text. And let's call this vividness instructions. And then let's remove this one and hit the little minus sign. Okay, so now it'll go intro, demographics, vividness instructions, and then we're going to have this big block full of headlines where you rate vividness for each one. And it'll randomly sample after we adjust the settings accordingly. We don't want the instructions shuffled into that deck, so to speak. Now, instead of copying this question from, and then, instead of redoing, like writing out this whole thing again, we're going to copy it. I kind of spoiled it there. So yeah, I just went to copy question. I'm going to name this one youth_2. And it's just data entry from here on out. It's very useful to have this skill of being able to create surveys. It's a good thing to be able to put on your CV and say, hey, if you have me in your lab, I'm going to be able to hit the ground running in terms of putting surveys up and getting your research through the... As you can see, I'm not very good at multitasking. So now we have 2 headlines. So as I was saying, it's useful to know how to do this. I also have a selfish motive for wanting to show more RAs how to do this, because I could potentially have them do this tedious thing. Although it's not really that tedious. I usually put on TV, and I'm able to do this very easily because I'm not talking while I'm doing it. I just put on TV, listen to a podcast or some music or something, and this really doesn't take that long. But making surveys could potentially get extremely tedious. I know I've spent a lot of time just doing something repetitive. But part of that's because I'm lazy, because you can learn how to automate certain things if you really go into the forums and ask people, look at old conversations. You can figure out very efficient ways to save yourself time, but that requires more brain activity than I'm willing to invest sometimes. Sometimes I want to do things the stupid, tedious way, so I don't have to spend brain power at all. And no, I'm not going to do this entire 500 thing in this video. I'm just doing a couple more. 16. Alright, so we have 4 right here in the rate vividness section. And I'm going to go ahead and go to block options. Where is it? Question randomization. Present only 2 of these. Oh, is there advanced randomization? I don't want to bother with this. Close it. Alright, present only 2 from here. There might be a smarter way to do this, but yeah, you could make each of these their own block, and it's actually easier to manage the randomization of blocks, because within a block, the items, I'm not sure if that's going to guarantee that they're evenly shown, but if it's randomized, it should be pretty much even. I don't want to have a bunch of one question blocks in the survey with 500 questions in it, and then 500 where you're rating vividness, 500 where you're rating concreteness. That would drive me crazy. But all right, we have these 4 headlines right here where you're rating vividness, and we're going to preview it and make sure that only 2 of these are shown and they're random. So let's do it. I'm going to do the phone this time. I am yay old and male. This preview data is not going to be in the study, so it's okay if it sucks. Okay, so yeah, it only showed 2, Florida man and another active euthanasia case. That's number 1 and number 3, so that's pretty random. Let's close the survey and see if they give us another set of 2 random ones. Mercy Act invoked and Florida man. Okay, yeah. It's looking pretty random. So basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put all 500 of these Mercy Act questions in there, in this rate vividness category. And then I'm going to probably try and find some way to copy the block and just change this right here. That might be kind of hard though. See, this is where I could go online and figure out like a quick way to just do. I want to copy this entire 500 question block but change the choices. That would probably take me 45 minutes to an hour. And I'm the kind of person where I'd rather just spend 2 hours just copying and pasting because I don't feel like trying to learn it. And that's kind of bad. But before I move on to that, I'm seeing something. Yeah, we need to do concreteness. Instructions and rate concreteness. And let's stick closely to the wording we used here. The instructions, vividness. Add a descriptive text. I'm going to work on these instructions and make sure they're better. So yeah, I'm lazy and I'm just going to create the same thing from earlier. I'll recreate it. These horizontal. What do we call these? Not concrete at all. Very concrete. I'm going to have to change extremely in all these because I just realized, damn it. Very vivid. I just realized that extremely is kind of an extreme word. We're scientists. We don't use such colorful language. Okay. Very concrete. Another good reason to do this not in person is whenever you're bored out of your mind. You don't have to hide it as much because I can't see the look on your face. And you can check your phone and really still retain and understand everything I'm telling you and not look rude. So it's win-win for another reason. I don't know why I had to do all that work to make it not bold. Take out the please, apparently. Not polite. Alright. And you just saw another example of why Qualtrics can sometimes be annoying. And now we gotta change all this stuff. Because we can't have euthanasia 1, euthanasia 2 in our survey output because we won't know if that's the answer to the question of how vivid it is or whether it's concrete. So this is youth 1C. All right. So now we can go ahead and copy this. Apparently bolding and unbolding works better if you're not in the rich content editor. You are not in 16.5, you liar. There we go. I can tell this is going to take forever. Another good thing, if more people learn how to do this in the lab, aside from learning the skill, is we could split this work up. Like one of us could do the concrete section, etc. Other active euthanasia case. Okay. We're going to do randomization. Obviously, in the final version of this, we're going to do like 20 per. All right. Go to survey flow. Let's make sure, going in order, you do intro demographics, vividness instructions, rate vividness, concrete instructions, rate concreteness. So I believe that's basically all you got to do now is create. So do a emotionality instructions and rate emotionality section, which I'm going to skip. I'm going to do by myself. And I'm also going to add the 500 or so headlines in here by myself. You don't need to be here for that. But we also need to do the categorization. Categorization. So let's create a new descriptive text. In the following section. Anyway, Mike's going to look at this later and tell me if this is a bit much. I really don't want people adding, trying to appease us or guess that we want multi-category. So we'll have the instructions right here and the categorization right here. We want people to put the headlines in one category. If they put a headline in two categories, we probably shouldn't use it. And so then we're going to put all the categories. We also need to have a definition of euthanasia. I just remembered that. Some people don't know what that is, which is okay. Where did that go? Here we go. In the fall, go grab a definition. I'm not sure if this counts as plagiarism. Probably not. So we're attributing the source, so it should be fine. All right. Glad I didn't forget that. Now for this first headline, we need this in bold, 16-point font, and Courier. There, looks more like a headline. Let's add multiple choice, and actually under multiple choice is a little arrow. Actually, I've done this. This is probably the best way to do it. Let's do it this way. Asia. Hurricane. All right. And we're going to call this Youth 1 Cat. Youth 1 Cat. Why are there two of these? Did I hit copy? Not remember. Oh well. We have two of these now. Call this one 2. Oh, I forgot airplane crashes. Shoot. Crashes. Qualtrics seems confused. Oh, have mercy on me. Okay, so there's only one in here. Remember what I was saying about Qualtrics being kind of... Let's copy this. Mercy. Alright, and we're going to call this Youth 2 Cat. Let's set the randomization to... There's only 2 in here now, but that's going to change eventually. Present only 2. Alright. So let's look at the survey flow. Got an intro, got demographics, and we're going to add things later. Got a euthanasia definition to make sure people know what that is. Vividness instructions followed by 20 random, eventually 20 random headlines where you rate vividness, same for concreteness, and then categorize. And we got to do emotionality, add that in. But I'm just going to go over the main things. What else do we need right here? We need to end the survey for sure. That gets kind of complicated. So, on mTurk, which is a platform where you can fill out surveys like this for chump change, you are assigned an mTurk ID. Let's do text entry. Below. So they'll enter their ID here. We'll be able to see it in our output, and we need to be able to match their ID to some data. We need a completion code. If they send us a completion code after they accept the assignment, then we can match the completion code with their ID, and then we know that we can pay them. If that didn't make too much sense, that's okay. So we're just going to display their completion code right here. Let's do static text or descriptive text. And no, this isn't some sort of drug reference. This is some mTurk lingo. Alright, I can never remember how to do this. So I'm going to go to a different survey I've already done before. So when you're creating a survey, you can go to the survey flow and create data that the participant doesn't see, called embedded data. I'm going to call this, I'll call it random int. It's really their completion code, but the code you use to enter it later is already done for me. So this code basically says create a random integer between, what is that, 800,000 and 850,000. So it'll be some very large digit number, and we probably won't get duplicates. It's gonna, you can create all kinds of variables right here that you can reference later or pipe in. And by piping in, I mean make it appear right here. So, oh, just get out of here. End of survey. I'm just going to actually copy this verbatim instead of doing all this stuff right here. To pipe in text, you do embed, you can take some embedded data and make it appear within the text. So this is random int. It'll show up. Let's make sure it shows up correctly. Let's preview it. I'm pretending I'm an mturk worker. I'm just going to put in a random mturk ID right here. I didn't have to answer that. Here's a definition of euthanasia. Here's some instructions. You technically don't have to answer these. You could click skip. I would be... That's weird. Oh, no, it's not weird. Yeah, you could technically just skip all these, and some workers might do that because our ethics board at Texas Tech does not allow us to have mandatory questions that you have to answer. And yep, there's the completion code. You can't force people to answer some questions, but if someone skips our entire survey, we may withhold their 20 cents or whatever it is we were going to pay them, and they will have wasted their time. All right, I think that's pretty much all the basics for creating a survey. There's a lot more stuff you can do with this platform. I do a lot of random assignment. Like you have a control condition and a couple of different experimental conditions. That's easily done in the survey flow. You go and create a randomizer, and you can put blocks and say, present one of these blocks randomly, and that effectively becomes an experimental manipulation. You can also do reaction time, how long it takes them to respond, stuff like that. But this is like a good way of getting yourself started, and I hope it was helpful. Later.